Well, Canada's former chief of the defense staff says he's not surprised by the American attack.
I'm not surprised that the attack occurred. I think that President Trump was likely employing a little bit of a ruse with his 2-week statement, which is useful in military tactics in operations like this. I think the time for clear negotiations with no threat had ended. And I think the rhetoric coming from the president indicated that this was a likelihood. Certainly, Mr. Trump is not often constant in a lot of his points of view, but this is one that he has been consistent about for a decade and more.
And you can catch the full interview with the former chief of the defense staff next hour on CTV's Question Period with Vashi Capellas right here on CTV News Channel. And let's bring in Eric Ham, our CTV News U.S. political analyst. Eric, thanks again for joining us.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me back, Roger.
The vice president has been making the rounds on the U.S. media this morning, saying the U.S. is not at war with Iran, but with Iran's nuclear program. How important is that message, and is it being heard?
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing here is the White House is now recognizing that this strike in Iran could send shivers through the country, which, quite frankly, does not want to see the United States engaged in a long-term war in the region. And I think what you're seeing now is the messaging from the White House that makes clear that this is just a strategic strike and that the United States is not committed to anything long-term in terms of putting boots on the ground. It also helps with the MAGA base, which there has been some growing concern that there would be resistance to the president in getting involved in this conflict. And now that we see that the United States has hit these 3 nuclear facilities, I think what you're seeing here is the White House making clear to send a clear message to its base as well as to the rest of the nation that now is not the time for the United States to move forward in a long-term protracted war, but also making clear that the president has stood by this notion that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon at any time, and the president is willing to do what is necessary to ensure that Iran does not.
Now, we're starting to see some images from those sites. What if the damage isn't as extensive as expected? Can you see the Trump administration going in again?
Well, I think then the administration will have a huge question mark on their hands. Do they decide to go in? And then if there are continued strikes by the United States, does that pull the United States further and further into the war? One of the things that we have been hearing that the president was, in fact, weighing was he wanted a guarantee that if, in fact, the United States did hit these sites, that they would be able to do the damage that he wanted to see, complete annihilation, destruction of their nuclear enrichment program. If that doesn't happen, then the president has a huge choice to make. Does he continue? And then does that risk pulling the United States further in? And then does that, of course, roil the rest of the nation and perhaps move some of his base away from him, given the fact that now you've got the United States looking more and more like they're getting involved in another conflict in the Middle East.
I was going to say, with the Trump supporters, how has the response been? Is it mixed? Is this going to bring them together, this initial one, as long as it doesn't go beyond this?
I think if it doesn't go beyond this, the president can look strong. I think he can show to his base that he is willing to act decisively. And I think those are some of the terms and some of the talking points we've already begun to hear, both from Hegseth at his press conference earlier today, and what we're now seeing with other people from within the administration making the rounds to the media. And so the president is certainly hoping this is a one-off. And again, just like with the assassination of General Soleimani, during his first term, the president has always, I think, believed that there was this narrative of strength when it came to Iran. And I think this will be a continuation of that if the president can, in fact, stop right here.
Okay, Eric, thanks as always.